pamozi ndi mtima umo. Tiende 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 pamozi ndi mtima umo.
Welcome to MTN Teleschool. My name is Ernest Mkwesa Kasolo. Today we are going to discuss some examination tips that will be able to help the candidate who is writing the exams to realize that this is wrong, this is bad, and the best way of doing things in an examination room. We would like to thank the MTN to bring this telescope, which is able to help candidates revise in mathematics, physical science, pure sciences, and English language. Please stay tuned as we discuss these examination tips this morning. However, if you have a question or any other thing to say, please send SMS. We'll be able to read that and answer questions that are necessary to be answered and advise where it is required. So, let us go through some of the examination tips that a candidate must be aware of. Now, these examination tips are divided into different stages. We have before going to the exam, in the exam, and at the end of the exam. These are very, very important issues that we are going to talk about today. The first point that I would like to bring up here is that a candidate who is going to write an exam must not break the night studying on the day of what writing. Why is this not a good thing? It is not a good thing in the sense that there are times that your mind can be saturated with a lot of information. At the end of the day, you go into the exam room, you completely forget even the little things that you know. More especially in science, where you are required to bring about the formulas, where you are required to do some calculations. There are times that you tend to mix up things because that day that you have studied throughout has made you tired, such that you completely forget even the little things that you know already. Please avoid such. The next point that I would like to talk about is the reporting time. Avoid reporting late for the exam. We have seen situations whereby somebody comes 20 minutes late into the exam and we find the friends are already settled and are writing. So this brings about panicking into the candidate. As a result, the candidate will start doing wrong things and will even start writing the exams without reading instructions. This must be avoided. It is very important that a student or a candidate who is writing exams arrive in the exam room earlier and then get settled before the actual exams start. Very, very important. The third point, do not panic, but be calm. Now, what brings about panicking are some of the few things that I've just talked about. Reporting late, not having enough rest. These can bring a lot of panicking. And remember, when you start panicking, you end up even answering questions on a wrong, you put answers on a wrong question. The answers that you know, you put them on the wrong question. Please avoid some of these issues. The next point is prepare before going to the examination. Have enough time to prepare before going to the examination. Now, what are you supposed to prepare? Remember, if you know, for instance, that the following day you are writing science paper 1, which is physics for this case, what are some of the things that are required when you are writing physics? You need to have a pen. You need to have a pen. So you know you are expected to draw the graph. You need to prepare your ID. You put your ID in place so that immediately when you go into the exam room, you don't need to look around to ask for those things. You need to have them yourself, because you find that the time you are going to start asking for a rubber, you start asking for a pen, your friend will also be in need of that. Therefore, it will bring about nervousness into you. The thing is, your conclusion will be, I have already failed, which will again bring about the issue of panicking. Really prepare before going to the exam room. Now, the other type of preparation is where you have to go through your work. Going through your work is trying to consolidate what you have already studied. Consolidating topic by topic, just going through, trying to make your work familiar. Trying to make your work familiar. This will be of very good help to you as you go into the exam room. Create enough time to prepare. Very, very important. I've already talked about reporting for the exam room much earlier. I said at least report for the exam room 30 minutes before the exam starts. At least 30 minutes before the exam starts, to help you settle down and be ready for the exam, that particular paper you are writing on that day. Very, very important thing that you need to understand, as my point 6 there. Avoid going into the exam room with the foreign material. What do we mean by foreign material? Foreign material is anything that you go with in the exam room that are not supposed to be allowed in the exam room. Whatever you go with in the exam room that are not supposed to be used in the exam room. For instance, a phone is part of foreign material because a phone is not supposed to be allowed in the exam room. Pre-written papers, there are certain candidates who would sit down and then they are convinced that these questions or these type of material always they appear in the exam paper. For instance, question on electricity, question on waves, question on radioactivity. They tend to sit down and write down on the piece of paper such that when they go into the exam room, they see such questions, then they produce those papers and then want to start copying. Please, once you are caught, the repercussion is not friendly. Like today, the penalty is once you are caught with any material that you go with in the exam room, which you are not supposed to, you have to be suspended from all the papers that are to be written. And that will have a bad effect on you. Please avoid anything that is not supposed to be allowed in the exam room. This is the reason why when you go in the exam room, they give you the paper. They show on the instructions what are some of the materials that you need to have. For instance, you need to have a calculator, scientific calculator, not programmable calculator, no, unprogrammable calculator. You need to have a mathematical set. But remember, if there are subjects like mathematics, some mathematical sets, they have already the formulas that are written on that. Then in that case, it becomes a what? A foreign material. You are not allowed to have such. Time and again, I have found a lot of candidates written some notes on a rule, on a necktie, sometimes on the skirt. Some, they even write in the palms. That is not allowed and must be avoided at all cost. Okay, the next point is read instructions on the question paper before the exam starts. All the papers that you are going to write, they have instructions given to you. Those instructions must be taken seriously because instructions are part of the exam. I'll give you an example. There's one candidate that I found answering questions. This was the multiple choice question where there was provision of the answer grid. There it was written shared on the correct answer. But because this candidate did not read instructions, used a pen and was putting the cross. Once you do such a thing, you have not followed the instructions. At the end of the day, you find that you fail even when you knew all the answers for those particular questions. Instructions are part of the exam. Look at Science Paper 1, for instance. Science Paper 1 is made up of 3 sections. Section A, multiple choice. This time, you have to put a cross using a pen. Why a pen? Because a pencil, we don't know. Anyone can pick up a rubber and rub that. But if you do it with a pen, it is very difficult for somebody to remove your answers from there. We don't know. It might happen in that way. But we are saying use a pen to put a cross there. Section B, it is talking about short answers. You have been provided with the spaces where you have to write the short answers in those spaces. Then section C, you have 3 questions, then you pick 2. Now, some candidates do not read instructions. What do? They write all the answers in a booklet which is provided to them, and that booklet is specifically for section C only. That booklet is specifically for section C only, not for section A, not for section B. That is failure to understand instruction is a very, very big offense in an exam. It's a punishable offense, of course. How can you be punished? You can be punished in such a way that you cannot be marked because you have not followed instructions. Now, section C, we are saying answer 2 instead of 3. Then what do? You answer everything. You have wasted a lot of time. The time you are wasting to answer the extra question which you are not allowed, you could have used it to answer these other questions in section A or in section B that you have left out from there. So please read instructions carefully. And where you are not clear, you can ask the invigilator. Here, we are only talking about instructions. You are not allowed to ask the invigilator for not understanding the question which is inside there, but only on the what? On the instructions. All right, let's move to the next point. Before you start writing, quickly read through all the questions. You are supposed to read through all the questions before you start answering them. What is the importance of that? The importance of that is to help you decide which questions do you have a lot of ideas in. This is to try to avoid wasting a lot of time on the question that you cannot understand. You are wasting time reading through, when you can have enough time to answer those other questions that you are able to remember very well. Read all the questions, and then you can even use a pencil to tick those questions that you feel you have a lot of ideas in. This will help you to decide what to answer. For instance, there are two questions that have been given to you to choose. Then these questions, question 1 and question 2, they are 10 marks, 10 marks. Now, this first question, you only know 6 questions from this, which will add up to 6 marks. Then this other one, you know the first 4. Then the last part you don't know. The first one, you don't know the first part, but you know the last part. So this part, the one you know the first part, will give you an idea to start answering that, yet you are leaving out the other one where you have more information at the end of the question. This is the reason why you are required to read through all the questions. When you read through all the questions, then you'll be able to make a decision which particular question should you answer and which one should you leave out. Right. Question 10, or rather, point number 10. We are saying, understand the pattern of questions you expect to face. Understand the pattern of the questions you are expected to face. You should be able to know that pure physics, the pattern is like this. Physical science, which is physical science physics paper 1, you should know the pattern the way it comes. I have had situations whereby a pupil is asking me, sir, what are we going to write tomorrow? Is it chemistry? Is it physics? Is it multiple choice? Whatever it can be. This is a failure to understand the pattern. You should know when it is written science paper 1, what is this? Why is this important? You end up studying science paper 2, which is chemistry, when you are going to write physics. Now, this new pattern, which has just been introduced, says that science paper 1 is physics only. Physics only. Science paper 2 is chemistry only. Science paper 3 is practical. Now, don't look at the past papers, that the paper codes that we used to use in the past. For instance, in the past, we used to have science paper 1, which was multiple choice, 20 questions, physics, 20 questions, chemistry. That used to be science paper 1. Science paper 2, it used to be physics throughout. Short answers and section C where you have to choose 2 out of 3. Science paper 3 used to be chemistry throughout. Now this time there is an introduction of the science practical for physical science. For physical science, there is a science practical which we call science paper 3. 5124/3, that is practical. 5124/2, that is chemistry. 5124/1, that is physics. Understand the pattern. This is very, very important. The next point that I would like to bring to your attention is write some points in the question paper with a pencil. As you are going through the questions, try to put down some points with a pencil. For instance, the question is about speed, velocity equation. Speed, velocity, acceleration equation. Then you read the question. When you read the question, for instance, a car starts from rest, you are trying to put your data there. Put down your data. And when you see that, remember all the equations that are needed on that particular question. For instance, V is equal to U plus 80. A is equal to V minus U over T. S is equal to UT plus half AT squared. We have V squared is equal to U squared plus 2AS. And then we have S is equal to V plus U divided by 2, everything divided by T. When you do like this, even when you get confused as you go on, you come back, you'll be able to remember the equations that you had written here. And they will help you to choose from there what you have to apply for the particular question. What are we saying? What we are saying is, as you go on reading, ideas will keep on coming. Put down those ideas. Write them in point form. So that the time you start writing, you'll be reminded of the points that you have written down. Right. Let's move to point 12. Know the time allocated for the paper. It is very important for you to understand how long is this paper supposed to take. For instance, science paper 1, which is physics. As I mentioned, before the pattern of questioning was changed, science paper 1, in that case, which was physical science, used to take 1 hour, 15 minutes. Now, this time, because the multiple choice part has been included into the main paper, 20 questions, multiple choice questions have been included in the main paper. This paper has been allocated 2 hours. So you take 2 hours to answer all the questions in that particular paper. 2 hours has been allocated to science paper 1. Again, 2 hours has also been allocated to science paper 2. 1 hour 30 minutes has been allocated to the practical part. So as you go, the time allocation will help you to plan your work. How are you going to allocate time to these particular questions? I have had situations whereby, as an invigilator, you remind the candidates about time. We have 30 minutes left. Then you hear everyone murmuring. That is a sign that time has not been apportioned well by individual candidates. Now, yes, we can agree time might not be enough, but this is the reason why, because you are racing against time, it is very important that you start with those questions that you know better. Because the time you have maybe 30 or 20 minutes remaining, then you will be able to struggle with those questions that you feel are more challenging than others. Remember, even at the last minute, ideas come. Ideas come. So it is important that you don't give up. Now, on the very issue of time, some candidates, they know that when the invigilator says start writing, is just to start writing even things that they don't know. That must be avoided. Please write things that are required. Write things that you know better. Not writing for the sake of writing. Please be time conscious. Next point, which is point number 13. Do not waste time copying the questions. We don't copy questions in the exam. I've found it very strange, and I've seen that sometimes our candidates are not guided well. You find that when you are marking the final exams, you find the candidate has copied all the questions and then starts inserting answers in those questions. Don't do that. Your job is to provide answers to the question. Questions have been given to you. More especially the last section where the paper is given to you and you have to answer the section C, 2 questions there. So most candidates are forced to be copying. They copy the question, then they put the answer. They copy the question and then put the answer. Do not do that. You are wasting time. Already, the marker has been given questions. So what the marker will be looking for is the correct answer that you should provide. And some candidates have ended up just copying the questions. And you find that during the time they are copying questions, they run out of time. And they end up reproducing other questions of the same to the marker. That should be avoided at all costs. The next point that we have to look at is that do not give or ask for aid from your friend. Avoid asking for aid from your friend. Let's take a break. We shall continue with the examination tips.
Hello! This is all you need to know about data bundles. Like when you need airtime to make calls, you need data bundles to browse the internet, send and receive photos on Facebook, chat on WhatsApp, send emails, listen to music, and many other things. Data is measured in bytes, kilobytes, megabytes, and gigabytes. These are a bit like money, and just like your bank balance, your MTN account has a data balance that you can use to buy data bundles ranging from 5 megabytes to 20 gigabytes for daily, weekly, and monthly subscription. To buy a bundle, dial *335*1#.
From sending emails to browsing or watching online videos, many of the things you use depend on your device's functionality and network capability. Entry-level devices have limited data usage, whereas smartphones and computers have limitless data usage. The longer you spend online, the more data you use.
Sometimes you feel like your data is running out really fast. That's because today's modern technology and higher definition content require and use up a lot more data. No need to worry. Data can be managed to work for you by minimizing on the number of apps that automatically update themselves and turning off your data when not in use. Make sure you use data bundles to browse the internet. When your bundle is depleted, you will be billed from your airtime. Perform regular data balance inquiries by dialing *335*3#.
I told the bus driver that I work hard for my money, so it better gets to Chipata.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I told him.
Yeah.
Weather, drama nizingono, or nizambili.
Tituma. And he kept trying to tell us something, but I was like, Ukagamba, Tiloa.
Cause cash money yave across Zambia.
Tituma. Ati? At bus sienda Kuchipata. He ended up South Africa. Hello, what?
Run, K-Star, run! You still got the bus.
Sending money doesn't have to be this dramatic. Open an MTN mobile money account today and send money to friends and loved ones across Zambia instantly. Dial *303# to send money with MTN, Zambia's #1 network. With MTN mobile money, Tituma.
MTN, everywhere you go.
Welcome to MTN Teleschool again. My name is Ernest Kasolo, discussing some of the examination tips that will be able to help our candidates do better in an exam. As I mentioned earlier, remember, following instructions is part of the exams. We have seen students not doing well, and they even appeal to ECZ to have the papers remarked without realizing that they did not follow instructions during the examination. Before the break, I was discussing point number 14, which says, do not give or ask for aid from your friend. This is a very common situation where a candidate would like to ask for the answer from the colleague, or would like to give the answer to another friend. Remember, an exam is between you and the paper that you are writing. You are not allowed to talk to your friend. You are not allowed to receive any help from your friend. You can only be allowed to ask maybe the invigilator if you want to go out, or if there is other thing that you want to be helped apart from the answers, asking for answers from the invigilator. Time and again, candidates have asked me, when you are going around, then a candidate will just point at a question, and I'm a science teacher. Then they are writing history. Then a candidate wants me to give the year in which an activity took place. This must be avoided at all costs. Invigilators are there to ensure that the exam go on smoothly, not to give answers to the candidates. Therefore, don't embarrass yourself by asking the answer from the invigilator. Don't embarrass yourself by asking for the answer from your colleague. We have seen some students even tearing part of the question paper, writing the question and wanting to send that to a friend. You are not allowed to tear any piece of paper from the examination material. That must be avoided at all costs. Never should you ask for aid from your friend. All that comes as a result of lack of preparation. A candidate who has prepared very well for the exam, I don't think will even have that time of looking around to seek for answers from the colleagues, copying for answers from the friend. That must be avoided at all costs, because once you are seen, the repercussion is not friendly. You have to leave the exam room, and all the papers that remain, you are not allowed to write. That is a penalty that is normally put in place. Right. Now, one of the most important thing that I have seen students doing is, in a situation where a question asks you to calculate. Remember, you cannot calculate without putting down the formula. So point number 16 is saying, put down the formula before you start your calculation. How do you start calculating without putting the formula? Where are you substituting? For instance, there is a question on a density, which is saying an object has the density of an object has the density of 5 grams per cubic centimeters. That is our density. Okay. Then it also has a mass of 20 grams. Calculate its volume. They are asking you to calculate the volume. How can you determine the volume if you don't put down the formula? What method are you going to use to find the solution for this answer? But I've seen most students, they would go on a piece of paper and then write the formula. Density is equal to mass over volume. Then they make even volume the subject of the formula. Volume is equal to mass over density. And then mass, we know it is 20 grams. Divide by density, which is 5 grams per cubic centimeters. And this gives us 4 cubic centimeters. Now, they do this on a rough paper, which is provided for them to do calculations. Then, when transferring on the actual question paper, where this is needed, instead of picking all of this information, they start from where the calculation has started from. They just say 20 grams divided by 5 grams per cubic centimeter, and this gives us 4 cubic centimeters. Where are you substituting? Where are you substituting? So the correct thing to do is, first of all, write the formula. When you write the formula, yes, you may not get a mark from the formula, but you are going to get a mark for you to substitute into the formula. Substitution will help you score the mark. So normally, a question like this will carry 2 marks. How are the marks going to be allocated? The marks, you get 1 mark for substituting into the formula. and you get another mark for the correct answer with the correct units. I'll talk about the units earlier on. But you cannot get a mark for this particular writing here because you are not substituting anywhere. There is no formula. There is no formula. So every time remember the formula and then get the answer, the values that you are given and substitute them into the formula. Sometimes I feel bad when I'm marking a question like this, and this is normally common to female candidates. They take things very casual, like writing the formula itself. Density is equal to mass over volume. Now, look at the way the formula has been written. Density D, yes, the symbol for density is D equals M, yes, the symbol for mass is M. Volume, the symbol for volume is V. And then they put in the values 20, okay, and then this is 5 grams per cubic centimeters. This is grams, and then V. Then 5V is equal to 20. Divide by 5, divide by 5, this and this. V is equal to 4 cubic centimeters. Is this right? No, it isn't. This point here shows that you are not dividing. This point here shows that you are not dividing. So, how can you get this answer here when the formula is wrong? You have not divided. It's a very common problem that I've seen, as I mentioned, more especially to the female candidates. Just feeling lazy to draw a line there to show that one is dividing. To draw the line there to show that one is dividing. My candidates, do the right thing. If you are multiplying, put the sign that you are multiplying. If you are adding, put the sign that you are adding. If you are dividing, let the sign be seen that you are dividing. Because without that, it will cost you marks. It will cost you marks. Right. Let me go to the next point. Ensure correct units are used. This is a very common thing where candidates just write without putting the unit. More especially onto the answer. Every time, remember to put the correct units for the correct answer. You should be able to remember if it is acceleration, it should be in meters per second squared. Velocity must be in meters per second. Distance must be in meters. Mass must be in kilograms. Volume must be in cubic centimeters. Wavelength must be in meters. When you are marking all the questions that require calculations, there is a point that is normally put there to say the answer must have the correct unit. If the unit is wrong, then that particular answer is wrong. So remember, every time you are calculating, if it is energy, remember energy. What units do we use for energy? Joules. Power. What units do we use for power? Watts or joules per second. Remember every time to put the units. The calculation that I was making on density. In this case, if a candidate just writes 4 in that case, and this question is carrying 2 marks, only 1 mark will be given for substitution into the formula. But the answer, which is not carrying the unit, will not score. The 4 will not score as the answer. Yes, the answer is 4 cubic centimeters, not just 4. 4 what? So every time you are looking at these quantities, do not forget the unit for a particular quantity. Very, very important. The next point that normally make pupils fail in an exam is failure to draw the diagrams clearly. Failure to draw the diagram clearly. Now, don't draw a rough diagram. This is an exam. You want marks. So, marks must be awarded for the hard work, for the right thing. In this case, if you are told, for instance, that draw a diagram which is showing an experiment on measuring the boiling point of water. Show how we determine the boiling point of water with the aid of the diagram. In most cases, the question will be with the aid of the diagram. There are 2 things that the examiner wants there. Wants the diagram and an explanation. An explanation should be according to the diagram that you have drawn. The diagram you have drawn and the explanation must coincide at one point. Now look at this. We want to determine the boiling point of water. So we put water in a beaker and we have our tripod stand there. Then we have our Bunsen burner there. Then you put your thermometer in like that. Okay, we take it. This is a thermometer. We have water there, which we want to determine the boiling point. Then you have your beaker there. Then your tripod stand there. Okay, and then of course you have the wire girls there. Then you have your Bunsen burner there. Let us look at this diagram. Let us look at this diagram. The question is the experiment workable? Are you telling me if you dip the thermometer in water and you leave it, it will remain standing in this particular position in water? The answer is no. So this experiment is not workable. Since it is not workable, you don't expect to score any mark from that. Because a thermometer cannot stand on its own in water. This is very wrong. It will only be correct if a clamp stand is introduced, which is able to hold the thermometer in that particular position. If the thermometer is held in that particular position, then this experiment is very workable, because the thermometer will be held by the clamp stand. There are so many experiments that we have seen pupils writing wrong things. Let me bring in another example. How do you determine the center of mass using plumb line method? We have seen again such questions being answered wrongly. For instance, you have your cardboard like that. You make 3 holes at different points. You have your pendulum, in that case, and then you pin the cardboard on the wall. You hang this string on that particular point where you have made holes. What are you expecting to see? You are expecting this to come down like that, right? Then you repeat that from all the points. Now, what have we seen? We have seen that after doing that, you need to draw a line according to the string. But we have seen candidates drawing lines in that way, and then they leave the experiment like that. Is this correct? No, it isn't. What is wrong in this display of work? These lines which have protruded here, because this is in air. Can you see lines in air? That is not possible. So these lines that are being drawn, they should be drawn on the cardboard, not in air. In this case, this experiment is not workable. It is not workable. And a candidate will not score mark. Any mark. You can't score any mark here because everything is totally wrong. The other point that I want to really emphasize is after drawing or before drawing, you can answer it in either way. You can either start by drawing, then you put an explanation, or you put an explanation, then you draw. Describe an experiment you can perform to show that black is a good absorber of heat. Describe an experiment you can perform to show that black surface is a good absorber of heat. What are some of the things that we want to see? We want to see a cane painted black to come out. In a situation where you are comparing black and white, we want to see a black cane, a white cane, and a source of heat in the middle. How do you show that the source of heat is in the middle? You draw a line reaching the white, you draw the line reaching the black, and then you put the 2 lines there. These show that the distance from the heater to the cane A is equal to the distance from the heater to cane B. These are the most important thing that we want to see. Now, listen to this. When we are doing the marking, the first question that we ask ourselves is the experiment workable? If the answer is yes, that's when marks will start being allocated. If the answer is no, then 0 is allocated to that particular work. So every time you are drawing diagrams, please think about it yourself. Is this experiment workable? If the answer is yes, then go ahead. If the answer is no, go back to your work and review again. Point number 19. Do not leave out necessary points or steps in the calculation. That's why a space is provided to you. That space is for you to use it. Do not leave out salient points, necessary steps. There are certain instances when the calculation might be long, and then you want to shorten it by getting rid of some steps. That is not right. There are some instances where You need to make this calculation. And then when you find the answer here, you need to pick up this answer and substitute at this particular point. Then from there, that's when you have now this answer to be used to get the final answer. Remember that all problems that will require those steps, even their mark allocation, are expected to be higher than simple questions just that requires 2 or 3 steps. The more the work, the more marks are allocated to a particular question. For instance, plotting a graph. When we are plotting a graph, what are the points that you need not to forget? When you're plotting a graph, the first thing is you have to think of a reasonable scale. Reasonable scale. What is a reasonable scale? A reasonable scale is a scale that is able to cover 3/4 of the graph paper. A scale that will cover 3/4 of a graph paper is considered to be a reasonable scale. What is the other salient point that you need to remember there? You need to remember the labeling of correct axis. Correct axis. If it is velocity time graph, you need to know y-axis must be velocity, x-axis must be time. Label it with correct units. For instance, we say time in seconds. Then this side, you say velocity in meters per second. You have labeled the axis correctly. In this case, you score a mark here and a mark there. What next? You need to have the points, visibility of the points. The points that you are putting there must be visible. They must be visible. You don't need a marker to start searching where is the point, where is the point. It must be clearly shown. And then the last mark is allocated for the smooth graph. The smooth graph that you have plotted. Now remember, there are some graphs which have scattered points. The graph must not pass through all the points. No. But identify some points where your graph is expected to pass. Right. Point number 20. Do not be too fast nor too slow in writing. This goes back to time management. Point number 21, go through the work before handing the answer. We have seen a situation where a candidate is able to hand in the question paper instead of the answer booklet. That is failure to go through. If you have gone through your work, you know this is the question paper, this is the answer booklet, and you know what to hand in. Time and again, we have seen at the marking center, question papers being included in the what? In the answer scripts. The question is, where have you taken the answer booklet? The last point, avoid leaving the exam room before time. There are some candidates who like rushing out of the exam room when they have not finished. That is not good. Avoid doing that. These are some of the most important tips, science tips, that you have to go through. Please, this is the end of my presentation. Enjoy connecting to MTN and revise many more other questions, other subjects that are forthcoming. Thank you so much. My name is Ernest Kasolo.
Tiende pamoja ndi mtima umo. 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 Tiende pamoja ndi mtima